from Provo, Utah. Hosted by Caleb Schweiss, Joseph DeGolier, and Caleb Craig. This is the Pseudo-intellectuals Book Club.
Welcome to the Anjin episode of the Pseudo-intellectuals Book Club.
Nay?
Yeah, nay. I am your host, one of three at least, Caleb Schweiss.
I'm Caleb Craig.
And I am Joseph DeGolier.
And you might recognize Joe and I and a little bit of Caleb Craig from a couple of our other podcasts. We do a Final Fantasy podcast, Ultima Final Fantasy, the ultimate Final Fantasy podcast to be exact. We've been doing that.
It is the exact title, yes.
Right. We've been doing that since about May 2014, and it's been a lot of fun, so we decided to branch out to our other hobbies. I mean, might as well sit around and talk about them and post it on iTunes while we're at it.
Might as well.
Yeah.
We're already going to do it.
Yeah, right, and we also have another offshoot of Ultima Final Fantasy. It's a segment where we read fan fiction.
Really bad fan fiction.
Fiction.
It's a lot of fun. It's called
it's great.
Super Sexy Swingin' Fan Fiction.
Yeah, it's erotic, so... At least the fan fiction is. It's a little too much, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. So check us out there if you haven't, if you're interested in it. If not, then yeah,
screw it. Just listen to this one.
Yeah, why not? So today we'll be reviewing the book we were supposed to finish about 3 months ago that I chose. It was it's Shogun by James Clavell.
James Clavell. So a little background on us, I believe, that we need to talk about real quick. We've been doing a book club between the three of us and a couple other friends that bailed out because they just couldn't take one book a month. Honestly,
ridiculous.
we couldn't
one of
finish
them,
Shogun in a month either.
Right, but one of them, it was the Green Mile that he couldn't finish in a month. So
that was the first book that he tried though. Okay, so we've been doing this book club for a while now. Maybe about a year, maybe a little longer than that. But there have been breaks with a few of the books.
There have been, yeah.
We're trying to stop that, though. With the monthly podcast, you're kind of like on a time limit to complete.
It's practically going to force us to do it.
Man, it's practically like that.
Practically. I think is what I said.
What was our first book?
It was Tale of Two Cities.
Tale of Two Cities by?
By...
Charles Dickens?
By Stephen King.
Yes.
The Stephen King's Tale of Two Cities.
Yes.
The classic.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
That would be amazing. I love Stephen King. But yeah, that was my first choice. The reason why I chose that is because it was a fairly influential book that I hadn't read, none of us had read. That's one of the prerequisites for the book choice, is that either no one has read it, or those who have read it want to read it again. So, like...
If it was a 3 out of 4 vote, but now there's only 3 of us.
Yeah. So basically now, let's say, if Caleb wanted to choose Lord of the Rings, which Joe and I have read, and it's amazing.
It's a great book.
It is fantastic. And it's one book, I don't care what anybody says.
That's how he wrote it.
Right. If Caleb were to want that, we would both have to then approve and say, okay, we can read Lord of the Rings.
Right, that was our old way of doing things. But we'll talk about how this podcast is going to work.
Of course.
With you listeners out there, you will, of course, be part of our book choosing.
Oh, yes.
A big part of the experience.
What'd you guys think of A Tale of Two Cities?
I did not like it.
Why not?
I enjoyed the ending.
I think everybody enjoyed the ending.
But partially because it was ending.
Yeah, I hated how... the part the guy that made the ending amazing was like hardly part of the book.
Yeah.
The big middle section.
He was really the only character that had any kind of substance to him.
He felt real.
Yeah. The other characters were like empty, especially the two main characters. They were like nothing.
The main chick's dad was kind of realistic.
Well, yeah, a little bit.
But yeah, I hate it. There was some... He has excellent... symbology, though, like meaning behind.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth into that book that we read into after we were finished with it. It's like, oh, it's kind of genius.
Yeah, they're like the wine bottle breaking right before the French Revolution stuff happens. That's awesome writing.
Right. So
too bad he had to really screw up the rest of it in a lot of ways to me. But
It was that, and the book was maybe with all the characters, and that the book was short with so many characters.
There were a
kind
lot
of hard
characters,
to keep track of.
yeah.
I'd say.
Jacques. What about Jacques?
Yeah. And it was it's old language, so it's a little harder for people like us to read.
Right,
I'd say.
and there's like 50 Jacques, so that was annoying.
Yeah, that's true. All the Jacques.
Jacques 7. It's like Red 13 from Final Fantasy.
I don't think it was bad.
No, I didn't.
I thought I left the book positively.
Well, yeah, because the ending was really good.
It was hard to get through. It was definitely a hike.
It was very hard to get through. The last 3 chapters were basically the only things worth reading.
And the beginning, there was some funny stuff in the beginning, like with the horses. That part was really funny.
Nah, not even the beginning.
Fine.
All right, what was the book after that?
The book after was...
It was our friend Cameron's choice.
Yes, it was Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger.
Yeah.
Yes.
J.D. Salinger.
Passed away recently.
Yep. He was super antisocial, and possibly he wrote the book because that's how he felt. I mean, maybe he was still like 15, 16 at heart.
You know, it's maybe when it came out, it made a big splash, but to us, it was just kind of like a whiny teenager book.
Yeah,
right.
That's really what it felt like.
A well-written, interesting, and the character was, it was... I think it was enveloping.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly.
It was pretty good.
A good book,
yes.
But still a whiny teenager book.
Right.
Yeah, it was definitely...
Part of me likes Tale of Two Cities more as a book, though.
You think so?
I think so.
I disagree.
I like how quickly you could read Catcher in the Rye, because it was simply written, and it was also written in an interesting way to where it was
the writing was genius.
Wasn't it also a shorter book? So it was like a really good book, and it was shorter, so it was just like got through it in like a day.
Yeah. I read like 200-something pages in like 3 hours or something.
Yeah.
Catcher in the Rye. I just destroyed it. And it wasn't because I was super, super interested, but I was never not interested.
There wasn't a moment that was really boring in
right.
the book, so you could just keep reading it and it wouldn't feel like
right. I think it was one of the lessers of the books that we've read, but I will give it credit for keeping my attention. Probably one of the best, just because it never had a moment where I was
and
like,
the characterization, the first person characterization of the narrator.
Yeah,
I thought that was cool.
Yeah,
I don't know how I said that sentence and whether or not it made sense, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we understood.
Yeah, it was.
I thought that was cool, and then I watched John Green, who of course wrote Fault in Our Stars and a couple other books.
Yeah,
he has a YouTube channel, and he was talking about, certain aspects of Catcher in the Rye, and the main character's, his whole like fear throughout the whole book of loss of innocence because he himself is going through loss of innocence. I thought it was very interesting and very genius, and I guess there's a lot of subtext that other people are reading into it that have to do with Salinger's war experience and all that other stuff. I think there's a lot of depth to that book, and a lot of people love it.
Yeah,
and I know it made a big splash and was like a super banned book when it came out.
Yeah, I don't know why.
It's nothing in comparison to Shogun, which I think is probably our highest content as far as adult content.
I don't know, man.
1Q84 was rough with the sexuality, but the violence in Shogun was...
Well, yeah.
It's much more brutal.
People always...
I would ban Shogun before I banned Catcher in the Rye.
Well, people always... view sexual stuff as being sexual stuff being more offensive.
That's actually Western culture.
Yeah, but that's our culture. So.
It's because of Christianity largely. Japan does not, as we recognize.
As we read in Shogun. Yes.
But so I see what you're saying. So with J.D. Salinger, the part where he goes and tries to sleep with the whore.
No, he doesn't try to sleep. He just tries to talk to her.
Well, yeah,
he just wants to talk to her.
He still goes and gets a prostitute.
He
was thinking about having sex with her, but he did end up just wanting to talk to her.
Right.
Because he didn't want to take that leap into becoming a man, even though he was attempting to. Maybe he was like kind of feeling the water. That was part of the theme. Well, this has got to happen. And then he got her there, and he's like, well, it doesn't have to happen now. I can hold out. So yeah, it was a good book. Honestly, it
was good. A lot better than I had a better experience with it than Tale of Two Cities, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are parts of Tale of Two Cities that are really admirable.
Thing is, though,
yes,
Liz
there are
hated
some.
Liz, your
my fiance Liz, she
yes.
reads a crap ton. She dislikes both of those books.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
she thinks the
liked
main character is whiny, and which she's right.
He is whiny, and we made this allusion earlier. It's like watching The Breakfast Club now.
Yeah. It's harder for us to relate to it because we're in our early 20s and not our late to middle teens.
Sure,
early
got
teens.
a lot of growing to do, but yeah,
we've gotten past the part where the main character was.
Yeah,
I feel yes.
So.
And same with The Breakfast Club.
Yes.
Or just these really whiny teenagers are whining about being whiny teenagers that are pretty well off.
Yeah, and Dickens was just a dick. Like, honestly, he was a horrible human being. So
I mean, it's in his name.
I could see not liking him for more than just his ridiculously convoluted writing style, where he's like, the year was 40 past 1800, or there was like some way that he worded a date, and I was like, good God, that took like a line and a half of text to say it was like the 7th day of the 11th month in the year da 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 da, and I'm like, good hell, it's July 7th 1840 or whatever the hell, 1760. I'm like, that is not hard, that is not necessary. There wasn't any of that, so I'll give J.D.
Have we all read A Christmas Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so much easier to read.
Yeah. It was a lot shorter, too.
Well, it was a lot shorter, but like the writing style seems different, too.
Yeah, well, he was kind of... the thing is about Dickens is no one liked him when he was alive. No one cared for his writing whatsoever. The Dickens love has like come much later than his existence.
It's always the people who
strange.
die that, like, nobody likes their stuff until they die. I don't know why that is.
Robert Jordan.
that is, no.
A lot of people loved him
is
before
not
that.
true.
But no, it's very interesting about Dickens.
Yeah, even like with artists, like as soon as they die, they become wildly popular, even though they weren't that popular before.
Right. So, third book
was
was it Once and Future King?
No, the third book
no,
was Green Mile.
Yeah, Green Mile.
Green Mile.
No, it was TJ's
Awesome.
book.
One of the other members that quit out in the middle of his own book because it was too much to take on at this time.
Yeah, you're right. He came home from a mission, he had a job, and that was it.
Sorry, TJ, if you're listening to this.
Yeah. Ooh, one book, so hard.
Yeah, dude, no kidding. But Green Mile was amazing. It was really
incredible.
Good book.
I still haven't seen the movie though, which I feel like I'm missing out on.
You are a little
really
bit
good.
Gosh, it was so much more heart than I've only read one other Stephen King book. It was,
I haven't read.
It was
that
The
much.
Shining.
Yeah.
Is what I'd read before, and there was so much more heart in the Green Mile, and I just cared so much about all the different characters, and of course you see it through the guard's eyes. It's just a great book.
It was very good, yeah.
Such a good book. I would recommend that. My favorite so far out of all the books we've read, I'd say, is The Green Mile.
Yeah.
Really? Green Mile?
Yeah. I know you have a different favorite, but Green Mile's my favorite.
Yeah, I might agree with that, actually. I think that Shogun was really good, but I don't think... I think Green Mile might be best out of them, which is... I feel like it shouldn't be out of the books that we've gone through, but I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
The writing was really good.
Well, it's Stephen King, so his writing's always good.
Yeah, I haven't had that much experience with Stephen King,
Yeah.
but it was a really well-written book, and
Liz hates him,
enjoyed
too.
it.
Well, she doesn't hate him, but she doesn't care for him too much.
Why doesn't she like?
Does she
Stephen
like
King?
anybody?
Yeah, she likes plenty of people.
I'm talking about his writing, like his physical writing. I see absolutely no problem with.
I think she doesn't like his style necessarily.
See, that's what I like.
It depends.
It's really to the point. It's
it's
not too detailed, but it's not like
it's different though in some other books.
It's not like shoot, Ender's Game. Who's the author? Orson Scott Card.
Yeah, Orson Scott
where he
Card.
doesn't describe anything.
Yeah.
And he's not like
You're just
Robert
supposed to
Jordan.
know.
And he's not like Robert Jordan, where he describes everything. It's like
Everything
a really
needs
good
to be
balance
described.
of,
Okay.
of really good, even-keeled, easy-to-read language, I think.
Hey, Lord of the Rings. Not everything needed to be super described. Second highest rated fantasy series, quote unquote.
On that one
Even
site that we saw.
Even though
What was
it's not
number
a
one?
series, Game
It
of
was
Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Not even finished. You can't call it like the best until it's finished.
The Wheel of Time
What
was
if
on
the
the list
ending
too.
sucks
Wheel of
and
Time
everybody's
is
like,
finished.
"Oh, well, it's not the best anymore." Well, you rated it the best.
They'll change the rating, and the ending's not going to suck. So, anyways,
You don't know that.
yeah, Green Mile.
Yeah, the ending might just be George R. Martin just dying.
Yeah.
No, they'll continue it on through the show. The writers of the show know how the series is going to end.
Are they
in
going to write
case...
the novels too?
No, the novels will just
That's
stop.
horrible.
Yeah, that just means that it would be just basically a book written about a TV show
Yeah. The books are
that
better,
was never
though.
finished because the TV show is obviously better.
I don't know about that.
Is that how you feel? Did you read Game of Thrones?
I read the first one, and I feel like the TV show was a little bit better.
The
and
first
it keeps
season?
Yeah, and
First season's amazing.
and George R. R. Martin keeps changing stuff about the show to make it better than his books.
Well, no,
Yeah,
it's
according
different.
to him.
It's
So
different, though.
yeah, it's not different.
The
because-
author is God, not the audience.
The film medium is different, therefore you have to make
he
certain
regretted
characters...
saying.
Certain characters needed more depth because they were featured not just in a book, so that it's being a different medium, you have to change things.
Well, he was also changing characters around and changing the story.
It's not all him, though. There are
It's-
directors to the show. He's just an
There's
on-set.
Writers are the ones who carry shows.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not just him. But yes, he
Eh,
does.
it's
There are
mostly
things
him.
being changed, but they're things that I approve of. More depth to characters, more stuff like that, and I think that's fine. Also, the show is inferior to the book.
Okay, so what was after Green Mile?
Once-
Green Mile was my book, which was Once Future King by...
The Green Mile was your
T.H.
book,
White.
which was What's the Future King? You mean after the Green Mile?
That's what I said.
No, it's not. Did you hear it?
Yeah, I heard it. But anyway,
Okay.
so Once a Future
What did I
King.
say?
You just said a nonsensical thing. Let's keep
Did I?
going.
Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, the Once Future King by T.H. White.
Why was
That's
this
my
one
book.
picked?
Why? Because it was King Arthur, man. It's like what people refer to as the original story.
The
even though
original
it's-
Arthurian novel?
Yeah, even though it's kind of not.
It's not. It is
Yeah.
way later than, like...
A lot of them,
Yeah.
but it's... I don't know. It's really good, and
Certainly the biggest one for our... for the 21st century.
they even had a Disney movie based after it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it
Not
makes
the
it...
best.
You know what's interesting is I think Disney got the rights to the second part of
As well?
Once a Future King. No, that's what he got originally, and then they ended up making a
the first part?
movie out of the first part.
It's
What?
probably better to make a movie out of the first part for kids. Because it starts
Yeah.
getting
Kids,
pretty
yes.
It,
There's
it
less
definitely...
affairs.
dark. Less
Yeah.
incest.
The T.H. White's Once Future King is an amazing book, especially if you have read the version that has Merlin, which I have, which these guys didn't do, which I felt like they should have. But
Well,
they
Merlin
didn't.
wasn't part of Once a Future King. It was like Once a Future King part.
But it was
Two.
though.
It was an add-on.
was.
It was a
Yeah.
separate book. It was like
It was a
Dave
continuation of the
Eddings.
story.
It was a continuation of the story, and it was also on the version of Audible that we listened to.
That's
Well-
true, but as soon as I noticed that the last book of Once a Future King was done, I was like, don't need to listen to it anymore.
Merlin was only like an hour extra.
Hey.
You could have just finished it.
We're a reading book club, not a listening book club.
And we've had
If
this
it's not-
argument so
Yes,
many
No,
times.
no, no. If it's not part of the book,
and you
don't
were on
have
his
to
side
read it.
before.
If it's not part of the book, you don't have to read it. So don't worry about the Merlin part, because it's not part of the book Once and Future King.
I felt that
It
it
is
was
an extra
and it,
book.
and it is part of
Yeah.
some of the books.
We didn't say
So
it needed
there.
to be, we needed to read the entire series.
Yeah,
of
we
Once
didn't
a
say
Future King.
the Hog Status Special Edition version.
You
of the
only
book.
didn't read Merlin because he found out that his book didn't contain Merlin.
He found out. I found out.
No, he found out.
Anyway, Once and Future King was.
It was good.
It was a really good book.
It was
yeah.
a very good book.
Very good, light-hearted fantasy with some
For the
dark,
first part,
some
yeah.
dark sections in it.
Very
you know.
dark stuff.
But the way it was written was like, someone kind of just telling you a story, and it was fun.
Yeah, it was a good one.
I really enjoyed that. And then after that was my pick.
Which was 1Q84.
Our last book before Shogun, 1Q84 by Murakami. And the reason I had picked it was because I had liked Norwegian Wood by the same author. And East of the Border, West of the Sun I thought was okay by the same author. And I saw 1Q84. I'm like, oh, he can write books that are over 200 pages. And so I grabbed it and just didn't read it.
Just decided to not bother.
Decided to wait for the book club podcast.
Oh yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I just felt like this is where it needed to be discussed. So, and then I listened to it instead of reading it. So that was fun.
Yeah, I bet it was.
It was a very interesting kind of mind bender.
Yeah, it was a very sci-fi fantasy book.
But it wasn't at the same time. It was
it was just like I don't know how to describe it.
Like a slight alternate reality.
Right,
Yeah.
and the characters in it don't feel quite right. And that's like the base of the book.
Yeah, it's like everything's a little bit off except for like the two main characters, and they're like
The two moons.
yeah. And
The
one of them is a green pea.
Only the main characters of the novel can see that, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone else can't. So, like,
And it's kind of like this epic love story where the characters don't meet till way late in the book.
Yeah, they don't meet till like the last third of
they
the
don't
book.
reunite, at least. They met as children.
Yeah, I guess they met as children, and they were.
But it's
in love
basically
ever since
about them trying to find each other
So-
again.
right in this world. What is that book about? Is it about Sakigahara or whatever?
You know,
I felt like I knew more about it right after I read it, but now I'm not.
Yeah, now it's like, ugh. That book was a complex piece of work.
it was, especially since it sort of ends on a cliffhanger.
Not really.
Not really,
He's
they
pumping
get
her.
It totally does because
They get into the real world.
No, they don't.
Yeah,
They
do.
leave that alternate reality and enter another alternate reality. It says that at the
Okay,
end of the
alright,
book.
alright.
That's why I was freaking out about it, because it was
Was that
really
what
weird.
Yeah, I thought
don't
they
think
entered
so.
back into the regular one, like they felt like they were back.
No, they went into their own world. They were trying to.
But their
they
own world
went
was
through-
slightly changed, but it wasn't like the
They-
other.
Well, no, the idea was that it was changed because they were changed.
Okay.
The
No,
world
they
they
kept-
went back into the world that they initially left.
No, they didn't.
I think
I'm
they
pretty
did.
sure
I'm
they did.
Pretty sure they didn't. They went into an alternate reality, and they kept like going through like these doorways or whatever to like get to where they were supposed to be.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't either.
Then you
I thought
guys
they
should
they
reread
climbed the ladder and then they were back.
Yeah, and then they
Nope,
pumped.
they weren't back.
And then he pumped
and then
her
they
gently.
pumped.
At the very ending.
I think that happened before they left.
No,
I'm pretty sure.
I think Caleb's right. Caleb Schweiss.
I think
I'm
they
pretty
left.
sure they had sex before they left.
They took off, man. They got out of there. Shit was crazy. With the ugly dude getting choked to death and like just all that shit going down, them getting chased.
The ice pick was awesome.
The ice pick
Yeah.
was sweet. The violent scenes in that, it was like watching a David Fincher film in a way. It's just like super normal, and then suddenly just ice pick to the brain. Not
It wasn't
bloody.
really
but
an
Not
ice
bloody,
pick.
it was just the violence.
It was
that
just
that
very
was.
violent. Like right then.
I really enjoyed that book. I'm glad I picked it.
And
Yeah, it
when
was a good one.
But it was a huge book.
Yeah, it
Right.
was.
Following in the footsteps of course, Once the Future King, which is also a huge book. And then we finally get to this huge book,
Shogun, which was even longer.
Shogun by James Clavell.
Yeah, the audible version was narrated by this British guy, and you'd think it'd be okay since the main character Blackthorn himself is British, but
No.
not really. The guy's British voice for Blackthorn is crappy, like just
His
bad.
British voice for everybody was just like weird, and then his Japanese voice for
Was awesome.
everyone else was pretty awesome.
It was awesome except when he was saying Wakarimasu.
And when he was
Yeah,
trying
He
to
was saying
when he was
Wakarimasu.
when he was trying to speak Japanese as a Japanese person, then it wasn't that great.
no, it was pretty bad.
The narrator obviously didn't know Japanese.
Not at all.
Not
That's-
that should be a requirement.
That seems kind of like it should if there's Japanese words spoken in the book. Like maybe they should
Boy.
find someone that might be able to at least pronounce the damn things. Not necessarily know, like study Japan and their culture and their language for years, but be able to pronounce it because it just feels.
His
feels
characterization of stuff was cool, but I thought he was just overall a very slow reader. Which I
Yeah.
had the same problem with 1Q84, but 1Q84 was there was slightly better sound quality or something.
That, and it had like two narrators, so like when it switched over, it kind of got like you didn't get bored of the
Female
one guy.
narrator was so slow.
She was. But I listened to it on a higher speed.
Yeah,
so
who wouldn't, honestly?
Yeah, it was
So Caleb, the book was your pick, Caleb Schweiss. Why did you pick Shogun?
Well, I picked Shogun because my grandfather had mentioned it to me before, and this was a book that he read probably within 5 or 10 years of it coming out, and it he loved it. You know, he would wake up, read it, go to work, come home, read it for hours and hours, go to bed, wake up, same shit, just for a month.
Well, it does take a long time to read that book.
It does, but I feel like he might have been a little bit of a slower reader, but he loved the book, and I had always been interested in reading it, and I had heard that there was a TV miniseries that was also critically acclaimed by James Clavell, and I just figured, well, let's see how good of a book it is.
1,152 pages, my edition, right here.
Yeah, it's a big book. Ooh. Same edition I read, too.
It's pretty beefy.
We're all pretty big, pretty used to big books, but I think 3 in a row is just rough.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
So this one took a long time to finish, especially when we've given ourselves, the 1 month deadline each time, and this was the second book that we've had to really wait on.
I think this one took us 5 months to finish, for all of us.
He took a month longer than us.
Well, yeah, but we
we
started it and then we stopped, and then I finished it pretty quickly, and then you finished it right after me, and then Caleb decided to take 3 months after that.
It was only 2 weeks.
Yeah,
after
our other listeners from our other podcast are getting really antsy about this podcast coming out, and we had to tell them. Someone's taking their sweet-ass time.
I was already done. By the time we announced it. You just didn't have time off from work. I finished the book over a month ago.
You're right. So that's the reason you picked the book. It's because your grandpa.
Yes. Because
I think my mom also recommended the book to me when I was in an antique shop. And of course they have old books, which I don't think Shogun's an old or rare book.
I don't think so either.
In comparison to what you can find, so I don't know why it was there, but I know she was like, "Hey, you're interested in Japanese stuff? You should read Shogun. And it's got this miniseries that's pretty good." And I guess she had seen the miniseries and hadn't read the book. Because I think if my mother knew what was in the book,
she would have not recommended it.
As far as sex toys, most especially large anal beads.
Oh man, that part.
And the extreme violence present in Shogun.
There was a lot.
I feel like maybe she would change her mind about recommending the book to me. just because it's my mom. So.
Yeah, I can see that.
But your grandpa was like, yeah, Caleb, he loves the anal beads.
Yeah, he knows. Hey, man.
I think your grandpa might know a little too much then.
Well, he just knows what it takes to pleasure himself, I guess. But, yeah, that was very interesting. And I feel like I wasn't expecting that, personally. The anal bead part.
Well, when they pulled out the sex toys in the middle of the book...
I was like,
yeah, they're just like, hey, we want to show you these things because they're funny.
I had headphones on at work, and we were closing, and I just started busting up laughing, and people were wondering what I was laughing about. I'm like, there's this book, it's just random.
It was pretty random.
All right, so initial impressions.
Initial impressions of the first...
How did you feel when I selected the book? Maybe the first little bit.
I was kind of... I'd wanted to read it over my mother's recommendation of it.
Okay.
The fact that it was about Japan, and of course I was interested in Japan. Still am, a little bit.
I mean, you're studying kanji, so...
Yeah.
Somewhat, loosely.
Somewhat, yeah. So I was interested in reading it. I didn't want to read another huge book, though, and I protested it greatly. And I'm protesting the next book greatly because it is also not very short, which would be nice to kind of have a change of pace from the 1,000-page books. And
is that
something under 500 pages would be nice.
Is the next one really that long?
It's 400 something, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's still a long book. Still a long book.
Yeah, it's
not long in comparison.
It's about as long. It's about as long as Green Mile.
It's all relative.
You're right.
Although we haven't really been reading much since Shogun, so it's gonna seem...
I don't know. Had you heard of the book before we started?
The Shogun? No, I hadn't heard of it. I really didn't. I just I didn't even know there was a TV show until you guys brought it up.
No, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I thought it was, when Caleb announced it, I was like, oh, okay. Japanese book, fine. And then it was pretty good. The beginning was really kind of boring to me. It was hard to get into.
I'd agree, yeah.
Yeah. But then it started picking up when the political stuff started getting more intense, and then there started being more action.
When Blackthorn finally met
Toranaga.
Yeah, it's that's when it starts to pick up.
Starts to get awesome.
Which really isn't that far in. But at the beginning part...
It's like 100-something pages in.
It's like 140. But really, it seemed really slow to me,
Would you say the 40 is in the realm of something?
Yeah, I would.
So when I say 100-something...
Yeah.
140... I'd say 40 could stand for... I think something would work.
Well, I wasn't protesting that. I was just saying that's about when it happened.
Okay, all right.
And I feel like I agree. The beginning was a little slow, and that's why it took us so long, because we stopped after, the first 200 pages.
Right. I had problems with the narrator, of course. I drive around for my work, so it's easier to listen to these things. Not that I don't read.
Yeah, and even reading it, I stopped reading it and had to restart. I didn't have to restart, but
you
I did.
wanted to pick up, where you were.
Yeah,
so.
And just to make sure I wouldn't forget about any of the political intrigue that was somewhat complex in the book. So
cool.
It was, yeah.
You want to tell us about James Clavell, the author of the book?
Yeah, so James Clavell is a British guy who was actually what was he? He was born in Australia, and he's to British parents, and he eventually became an American. He did the process and joined us over here. And interestingly enough, he was actually in World War II and was captured by the Japanese and was in a prisoner of war camp for a few years. And one of his other books in the series, quote-unquote series, it's like the Asian Saga or whatever they call it, he depicts the camp that he's trapped in, and one of the main characters, the king in King Rat, is actually an American soldier who ends up freeing them in this prisoner of war camp that's super brutal. 10% of the people who went in ended up living, according to Clavell. So pretty intense place, and he ended up getting saved by this American guy. And
so you think that's where his interest in the East came from?
Probably. I mean, he's
being captured by...
Yeah, you'd think that he'd have a more negative view on that.
I think his negative view does come out very much in the book, I would say.
Well, with their lack of care for life, maybe, but...
So James Clavell is best known for probably this book and his screenwriting career, most notably Great Escape.
Right, and then also this...
And the Shogun miniseries,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, he's a big action guy.
He is.
So...
There were some good action scenes in that book.
Yeah, that's true.
Like when the earthquake happened and he saved Toranaga's life for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good part.
Yeah, and then any of the parts with the ninja, that was really intense. I really enjoyed those.
So what did you especially like about the book, Caleb? Craig? Or Schweiss?
One of us.
One of you guys answer. There's two Calebs. This is so confusing.
Yeah.
It's hard for him.
I think he'd be used to it by now, but I think the thing I liked the most,
yeah,
probably the action sequences and the political intrigue. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was cool how Toranaga had everything pretty much planned out, and you can kind of see some of it loosely as he was doing it.
Yeah.
And I thought Toranaga was freaking awesome.
Do you want to give us a little overview about what the book's about for those who haven't read the book?
All right, so...
And are somehow listening to this.
Yeah. So the story starts out with a British guy in a ship, and they're sailing to reach the Japans, essentially, and he bought a rudder.
Which they'd never been to before.
Right. The Portuguese had been there and have been trading, and they're kind of sick of the Portuguese having a monopoly over trading in the Japans, because it's a land of legend at this time.
Did they know the Portuguese were there beforehand?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, okay.
He bought a rudder from the Portuguese to get there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's not something legal, like that, because they're enemies, but the Portuguese guy didn't give a shit, apparently. So he ends up getting basically marooned on the Japans. They're starving. They've been out at sea for years. Their food's gone. Everyone's got the scurvy, and yeah.
Except for Blackthorn in the TV show, he's like clean all the time.
Yeah, he's a beautiful man on the
He's
show.
an incredibly gorgeous man.
But they shipwreck and they're captured by the Japanese, and basically Blackthorn is the leader because the actual Captain General or whatever is dying, and he ends up dying. So Blackthorn's kind of the main dude, and he gets to live among the civilized, and his actions kind of make the path for
right. And the reason he gets to live is
comrades.
because Toranaga, who's the main dude over the area that they're captured in,
Right.
He's curious about him.
Right.
So that's what keeps him alive. And
Essentially, yeah. The
Toranaga
curiosity.
is wondering if he can use him.
Yeah, and
Which,
he
of course,
can.
he eventually does.
Yeah, to awesome extent. But yeah, and he ends up meeting the various. He goes through the hierarchy of Japan essentially, where he meets the village leader, and then like the village leader's leader, and then like the overlord of everything, or one of the ones that are claiming to be, which is Toranaga, the main Japanese character in the book. He's basically the original leader of Japan, died, and there's a couple different forces vying for control, and neither of them truly have, I guess, before the leader before Toranaga, it was kind of like whoever's the most powerful.
It was war.
Leads. It was war, yeah.
Like 20 years before this book is when, or when this book takes place, is when Japan was brought together temporarily
Right.
By the Taiko.
by the Taiko, and Toranaga was a huge part of that. And then everybody's wondering if Toranaga is gonna try to use
His clout.
Yeah,
his stuff to like take over.
The two guys are Ishido and Toranaga, and Ishido is already with like the Taiko's wife and son, so they believe that Toranaga is going to be the one that's going to be fighting against the throne already.
But really,
because
it's,
he's not
like half the novel he's denying.
Yeah, even though like the entire time he's like, I don't want to be Shogun. I just want him to be Shogun.
I don't think he did for a part of it either. Honestly,
I think he played you for a fool.
I don't know. I think that he did only,
Which is the character. He plays everybody.
It's true.
I think he did
Like a
only
chessboard.
because he knew that Ishido was trying to become the leader too, and he was going to kill the kid. So Toranaga would rather be the leader because he's better, and he knows that he's not going to kill the kid.
Maybe.
I think that's a lot.
I don't know what his motivations were necessarily, but
He ended up becoming Shogun.
he's a calculating man.
Yeah, he's a genius. But so there's those two forces, and Toranaga is born of royalty. Essentially, he's of good stock, and Ishido is like some peasant guy, and it just offends the shit out of Toranaga to no end that this peasant is just trying to become leader of Japan because he doesn't belong, which is hard for us Westerners to really understand because it's more of a you can come from anywhere kind of thing, but not so much for them. So anyway, they end up fighting, obviously, and Toranaga ends up winning.
All right.
But also,
Get back to Blackthorn.
Right. One of the big themes with Blackthorn is his love story with a Japanese woman that he ends up meeting, who is a translator.
As he becomes
Toranaga.
he becomes a part of this society, and
Right, and
eventually becomes a samurai and someone pretty high up.
Yeah, because of Toranaga's interest in him and his intellect, he rises up the ranks of a society that probably would never do that, but they did for the guy
it's based upon
Blackthorn's based upon a real guy that became a samurai, but this guy became something more in the book, like a
more
higher,
than just a samurai. It's like
Yeah.
what did they call him?
I cannot
They
remember.
made him master over
Wasn't
ships, but I don't
Shogunate.
remember
It
what
was,
like his exact title was.
It was
I can't
it was
remember.
before that though. He was like honored immediately almost. He gets land and money for his position,
right.
whereas samurai basically just get tax. They can just tax the areas they're in.
I think he made him his personal pilot or something like that. I don't remember what it was.
That was part of it, but that wasn't his position necessarily in the society.
I don't remember.
All right, yeah, big high up job
yeah,
that a
essentially.
white guy shouldn't have
Right.
in Japan.
Well, I mean, they're all kind of white. But
Caucasian.
okay. So yeah, then he meets the translator and he falls in love with this woman, which honestly, we've all had issues with the story.
With the love story?
Yeah. It feels really odd.
It does.
I didn't have as many issues as you guys did, so maybe you guys should talk about this a little more. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, in the middle of this, of course, Toranaga can't really, talk to Blackthorn without a translator, and the translator, her name is Moriko.
Well, first they had one of the Portuguese church leaders be his translator for him.
He was a complete douche.
Yeah, and Blackthorn had to explain that he was at war with these people, and what they said couldn't be trusted, so he needed another person to translate for him so that they couldn't lie.
So they got a Christian Japanese woman named Moriko.
Yeah, who spoke perfect English.
Right, and
well, she spoke Portuguese, and he spoke Portuguese, which they were able to communicate.
It was written in English, so.
She has a bad relationship with her husband.
Right.
And then there's, of course, this love story that kind of slowly blossoms from Blackthorn and Moriko, and eventually she ends up cheating on her husband with Blackthorn.
Yeah.
Sometimes without Blackthorn even knowing that was her.
And it's
well, she convinced him that it wasn't her.
Ah, yes. She convinced him that it was her servant.
She told him that it was her servant.
In the middle of the night.
She dressed up like her, put like her necklace on her, and then like sprayed her perfume that she always wears on her to like be her for the night.
Right, so they were. No, she was trying to deny it because it's such a big deal.
BBS,
yeah.
What I didn't like about the romance, and I think it was just the character of Moriko, she seemed so subservient, almost cartoonishly subservient, and I don't know, it didn't seem realistic to me.
Okay.
And I didn't. Yeah. I guess she's extremely beautiful, so I can see why Blackthorn. I mean, I like Asian women too.
I just thought it was kind of weird how like the love story begins by her hating him because like he's rude and he's a barbarian.
He's a
heretic.
heretic.
She trains him,
and apparently he's against everything she believes in. So
he's a heretic. He's against her church.
Yeah, so she like doesn't like him. She always talks about how much she hates him, and then all of a sudden she's like, "I love you. Well, I love you so much."
It did slowly blossom, but it escalated quickly.
It did. It really jumped right in there.
It was more like friendly nods, and then like bam, they just did it. You know? Like so, it slowly happened, but then when it happened, it was just. Goosh.
It's like exponential growth.
Yeah. There you go. So. Yeah, I didn't have too many issues with that, and I liked the character, but I could see where her conflict, where she was, she's Christian, but she's Japanese at the same time, and then she ends up choosing her Japanese.
I thought that was interesting.
I did, but it was weird how she only did it at the very last minute. Like, the whole other time, she would always choose her Christian.
She didn't have to choose the other time.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I don't know.
That's what she was trying to say, is that like she could be both the entire time.
But she couldn't. And that's why
that's what Blackthorn kept telling her, but she's like, no, I can be both.
That's what Toranaga kept telling her, too.
And all this time through this shallow relationship, there's, of course, these multiple attempts on the lives of Blackthorn and Toranaga.
Which Blackthorn always saves Toranaga from every time.
There's not that many times.
He saves his life like 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times, yeah. Well, for like a 1,200-page novel, I guess it's not too bad.
Yeah, but like think about the amount of coincidence that would take. Like he's just like always there at the right times. He's saved everybody like a bunch of times. Like he saved his one Portuguese friend, even though he tried to kill him. He saved like somebody else. I don't remember. And he saved Toranaga.
He's the hero.
2 or 3 times.
I didn't save Mariko.
No, he didn't.
He didn't save Mariko.
He could not. There was no way.
Which was a little bit sad.
Yeah, that was
there was an interesting part of the book.
So anyway,
she gets destroyed.
There's a part where one of the leader of the town that Blackthorn ended up washing up in basically takes Ishido's side in the fight because he feels like Ishido has the upper hand, which he seems to, but really Toranaga is gonna, blow this guy away the whole time.
Right.
Because he's got all these allies or these plans to get allies and just have the numbers just completely reverse. So this guy basically tries to kill off pretty much everyone on Toranaga's side and has Ninja come in and attack the castle, the Osaka castle, which is where Ishido is and Toranaga was as well. And there's basically an attempt on the Anjin-san, which is Blackthorn's life, and they end up killing Mariko and like a bunch of other members of their house, which are pretty important, but not as important as Mariko, obviously. So that guy ends up getting busted because friggin' Toranaga knows everything in this book.
Yeah, he
does. There's a lot of political intrigue.
There's a lot of political intrigue. There's a main love plot, I'd say.
Yeah,
which I didn't really care for, but there's a lot of other stuff in the book, and then the action sequences of Toranaga, all that stuff. Really, I think really cool stuff.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the hunting parts too, where he's out hunting
with the birds, the falcons.
Yeah, with the falcons.
It was very symbolic of the other characters. Both directly when it talks about it being symbolic and also before it talks about it. But, I thought that was really interesting.
I also thought it was pretty interesting how he pretended to be depressed for like a month or so to gain time.
Yeah.
And to screw people over.
Yeah.
Gain time to get alliances.
Toranaga's very smart.
Yeah.
In this book.
Yeah, he is. He's a genius.
And everybody believed that he was super depressed.
And was just giving up.
Yeah.
Really, he was just biding time to screw him even harder. And he does, both in this and in actuality. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was great. The historical accuracy of the book, however, I call into question. Not because I'm an expert on Japanese culture, which I am not, certainly not. But there are some things that kind of bug me where I was like, this can't be right.
Like what?
The nature of Mariko, as I talked about, really bugged me. And then the super violent nature of the samurai versus the people underneath the samurai. Although I know that there is a class issue there, I cannot quite believe that everybody with power was so bloodthirsty in Japan at the time. And this is based upon my watching of many Japanese movies from the 50s, mostly Akira Kurosawa type stuff. Those samurai movies.
They could just want to dial it down.
You gotta remember,
maybe. It's not like that's real life either, though. That's also fictional.
The whole country was at war constantly, so it's not too hard to believe that these smaller factions, the samurai, would be just as bad as their leaders. Although I felt the same way. I mean, don't get me wrong, I felt like it was ridiculously violent. And I was like, what is seppuku? I mean, it seems like it's supposed to be this symbolic sort of thing. And they mention that in the book. But then there's times where it's like, you pissed me off, go kill yourself.
Well, it's them being able to commit seppuku is allowing yourself to retain your honor while still having to die.
But it seems...
But so that's what they mean, is you still can have honor, but you must die now.
Yeah, well, it seems like in some cases you should be disgraced. So, some of the guys that really screwed up that they were allowed to commit seppuku seems wrong. They have forfeited their honor, therefore shouldn't be allowed.
He was showing them respect when they were high enough level for that.
You think so?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I guess not every action that you've taken before the one that makes you need to kill yourself should be completely... negated by messing up that one time.
Yeah, and as far as Mariko-san being, super subservient, I felt like she was pretending to be most of the time, because, during the private talks between her and Toranaga, she's pretty outspoken, and he has to, reprimand her for that a few times.
Yeah, maybe.
She does kind of speak her mind a few times, but she does, kind of pretend to be that way, especially during the end parts where, she's trying to leave the castle. Remember that? Where she dies?
Mm-hmm.
She was, trying to force her way out, which she wasn't very subservient then.
Nah, I guess not. She was sometimes a strong character.
Yeah. I think most of it was her just pretending to be that way. Because, like, I think women had to be, because even though, like, they could have a high position, women were still lower than men at all times.
Not at all times. In the house, they weren't. They were the heads of the house in Japanese culture, the women.
According to Shogun.
No, also in reality.
I don't know reality on this.
They run the finances and stuff like that.
That's because the men can't be bothered with it, but that doesn't mean that they hold a high position, like, higher than the men. The men are always more important.
I don't think so.
Always.
I think it's kind of like... It's different. It's not like Western culture, I don't think.
Well, the men could decide, according to Shogun, the men could decide to just kill their family on a whim.
They could, according to the book.
And I'm pretty sure that, like, a samurai's son, when he becomes old enough, is also more important than the wife.
Maybe, but that doesn't mean that they don't do separate things that are also important. I think it's more like a job class system, honestly.
They do important things, but I'm pretty sure that, like, as a status, men are always higher.
Yeah, I think the Eta, though, the scum are all the same.
I think, probably.
Even if they have a house, they're probably, like, all the same, because they don't matter.
Yeah.
I love that.
I don't... Okay, I'm going back to my old... I don't think it was nearly as violent. Sorry. Just fell. I don't think it was nearly as violent a culture as maybe the book portrayed, and I do think that probably has to do with he's a Western author, so he wants to make a really action-filled book.
Probably.
And then he's also, a prisoner of war from Japanese soldiers. Probably looks upon Japanese men as extremely violent.
Probably. They do portray the normal men to be that way, whereas the higher up guys weren't really as bloodthirsty as some of the lower guys.
Yes.
Which is interesting, considering the Emperor and during World War II, his generals were the ones that were super bloodthirsty, and he was like against it. So really, the upper guys should be the ones that are super bloodthirsty in the book, and some of them are. I mean, there's the village leader of the village that Blackthorn lands in that's basically wants domination for himself. So I can see that being influenced to some extent. But yeah, the graphic violence, I could definitely see.
The graphic violence, however, was extremely entertaining.
It was. Yeah. It made for interesting parts.
I don't think he saw the Japanese getting attacked by ninja, so I know he did at least some sort of research. And he did, I did read that he would visit the places that he'd write about a lot, so he was accurate in their depiction? To some extent. Although, the Japanese don't care much for Shogun.
No, not the miniseries, at least.
I think they like the book, but not...
I don't know if they like the book. I've never read anything about Japanese views towards the book of Shogun, but the short version of Shogun that they got on Japanese television when the miniseries came out, they did not care for it, especially Akira Kurosawa, of course, one of the biggest filmmakers of all time.
Who just, completely wrote off Toshiro Mifune for being in it.
Right, and so he wouldn't work with Mifune anymore after Mifune played Toranaga in the miniseries.
Which is really sad, because they make a great pair.
It is. Every, great Akira Kurosawa movie, besides maybe Ron, stars Mifune.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't always star Mifune, but it has Mifune.
Yeah, he's in there somewhere.
Right. Man. Gosh. Kurosawa, guys, look him up.
Yeah. Good movies.
Seven Samurai, High and Low, Ikiru. Yeah.
Seven Samurai is probably the best movie ever made. So
it's up there.
I'm just putting that out there.
It's up there. What'd you guys think about James Clavell's writing style?
I was kind of bothered by it that he kept switching languages all the time.
Right, we discussed this earlier. There was this awesome Goodreads review of the book that really summed up how James Clavell used Japanese language. He always, switching the language all the time. It really captures the soul of the book, and during the book, the
Japanese people always were like apologizing and putting themselves down.
Right.
And they would always say "ne" at the end of almost every sentence.
Ne is basically like a yeah or an eh.
Or
like,
you know what I'm saying kind of a thing. It's kind of
yeah,
how
you know what I'm
felt
saying, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
At the very end of the sentence, you know what I'm saying?
I do believe I know what you're
Ne?
saying.
Right, and I think a lot of the reason why they were talking, like apologizing for things is because it's not their place in society to question Blackthorn. Even though he's a foreigner, he is a high-ranking one because of Toranaga's interest in him.
Yeah,
so they're like saying, you probably shouldn't do this, but sorry to say this, but you're an idiot.
Yeah, they basically have to apologize that they have opinions.
Right, so here is the review for Shogun from Rob on Goodreads. He read it in April 2009, and he posted this about 10 months ago. It was recommended for his liege lord, and it begins, "So sorry, I am not worthy of the honor of reviewing this novel. If, however, my lord insists it, then I shall endeavor to offer up some humble thoughts regarding its mighty, even epic narrative. Nay? The scope is so vast, the characters and settings are so many, the head is liable to spin at times, so sorry. But the arc it follows is like a peregrine's path through the sky, long but fast and with vicious twists along what might otherwise have seemed a predictable path. I'm sure my lord would agree that parts of the story can become quite tedious. I am not speaking of the slow-to-develop romance between Mariko and the Anjin-san, nor even of the dueling political machinations of Toranaga and Ishido.
You sure that's how you say that word?
I don't know.
I don't even know what it means.
Machinations.
Someone's going to think we're an idiot. That's why we're the pseudo-intellectual book club.
Yeah, whatever. Screw that word. So, no, sire. This humble vassal speaks more to the text.
You mean vassal?
Vassal, vassal, whatever.
Vassal?
That sounds like some dude's name in a fantasy book. I am Vassal.
Yeah, vassal. I don't know why I said that. Vassal just seems like such a dumb word. It's like Vaseline.
Oh,
the humble vassal speaks more to the text and how Japanese is interwoven with the barbarian words in so many places. And then how barbarian words come even to replace Japanese. Or barbarian words standing in for the words of other barbarian tongues. If you'll excuse this vassal's petulant tongue, sire, it's enough to make one fart dust. So sorry. But these tedious affectations do blend in after a while, nay? And the narrative is quite an enjoyable one.
Sorry.
Full of so much intrigue and humor. A rousing and enjoyable tale of which I am not worthy to comment further. Please, I cannot live with this shame. Please allow me to commit seppuku at once. And of course, seppuku is essentially suicide.
It's ritualistic suicide.
Right.
Harakiri, I think, is the same thing.
Just a different name for it.
Yeah.
I think it's more ritual.
I can't remember. I looked up the differences between the two, and now I don't remember.
But they weren't that great. Not too much.
No.
Yeah, so that basically sums up the book in a lot of ways. It is very interesting how they go from like speaking Japanese to like mixing it with English, and they.
Well, sometimes you're seeing it from Blackthorn's perspective, so he can understand certain things, and he can not understand other things.
Right.
But then it'll switch perspectives to the Japanese, in which when it is in the Japanese perspective, then it'll switch to English with, little colorful Japanese phrases like ne.
Right.
Or wakarimasu ka, which, of course, we all now know what it means.
Right.
At
And I
the
mean,
end of the novel.
that's for obvious reasons, so that we can understand what the Japanese are saying to each other, or else
Right.
we'd have to know Japanese and that'd be a pain in the ass. So it is a little weird, especially when they do mix in the Japanese phrases like ne, or, the Japanese words even. It just kind of, it kind of pulls you out of the moment of the text in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, but I don't know if it's necessarily the best choice.
I thought it was fine.
You
I
think so?
I didn't get pulled out of it at all. That guy pointing it out is really funny, because you kind of get used to what they're saying and how they're saying it.
Right.
When you're reading the book, and then someone pointing it out like that on Goodreads, it's just...
It definitely makes it funnier.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
Any final thoughts on Shogun before we talk about what the podcast is going to be?
I think I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
Were you satisfied with the book?
I was.
Out of 5
overall,
stars, what'd you give it?
Probably 4.
4?
I gave it 4.
I also gave it 4.
We're,
I guess we are all in agreement here.
yeah, I probably would
It is a
have.
4-star book. So
4
sorry.
out of 5.
I probably would have given it
So
maybe,
sorry?
Yeah.
maybe 4.5, but the
Sorry,
option,
Anjin-san.
but the option on Goodreads
On
is
Goodreads.
4 or 5, and it's not worth a 5 personally. So 4 it is.
All right, guys. So the way this podcast is going to work, this book club is going to work, is that at the beginning of each month, we're going to have, or I guess at the end of a podcast. So let's say at the end of this podcast, we're going to decide what book is going to be read next month.
Yeah.
Based upon our old order of
Yes.
like who decides, but that's just next month.
Right.
Which we'll get into what the book is going to be next. The month after that, however, we're going to have you guys vote on what the book should be.
Yeah, each of us will pick a book, and then you will pick which one out of those that you want us to read and review.
Right, you'll go to our website and you'll vote on it. It'll be right in the front page. So we'll each have a nomination, and then you guys decide which nomination shall be the book of the month after next.
Yeah.
But next month, what's our book going to be?
It is a book called Tagana by Guy Gavriel Kay.
Okay, and what kind of book is it?
It is a fantasy book.
And how many fantasy books are we expected to have you nominate?
Probably a lot.
Okay.
I'm just gonna be that fantasy guy. I don't know, but I feel like most people read fantasies.
I think most people in your social circle read fantasies.
Well, we all read fantasies, so...
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, science fiction and historical fiction are always good, too, but...
I don't know about science fiction always being good.
I like Michael Crichton.
they're pretty good.
Michael Crichton, yeah, that's science fiction.
Yeah, that is science fiction.
Not nearly as insane as like Orson Scott Card, where it's just like, God, it's
I liked Ender's Game quite a bit.
Super science fiction, but
I don't know. What are you? Let's talk about each other for a second because we reviewed Shogun. We've talked about how this podcast is going to work, and we'll get the website out for you at the end of this show. Caleb Craig, what are some of your favorite books, and what turns you on as far as books go? I mean, besides the obvious, erotic material that we all read extreme amounts of.
substantial.
Yes.
Exactly. I can't help it. Like, when I'm at a stoplight, I'm like, get me my erotic novel. I need to read this right now.
I don't know if there is anything
Oh, it's
aside
Green
from
Light.
erotic novels.
And fantasy, of course.
Well,
but
yeah,
it's the same thing, right?
Erotic fantasy.
Erotic
that's
fantasy.
That's where you gotta go to. I don't know.
I love 1Q84.
Yeah. It's all about those plump penises.
Oh my god. How many penises do you think we could count through 1Q84?
Dude, I bet there's about 100 mentions about a penis.
That's probably all right. Yeah.
Well, at least.
And how
100.
many? And on the flip side, how many vaginas?
Probably none. I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's none.
I think Murakami kind of did a 180 on his sexuality when he wrote.
Is it usually
1Q84.
vaginas in the other ones?
It is usually vaginas.
Well, I also think that the only character getting laid was the female one, so it made sense.
Well, no, because Tengo got laid once, even if it was really disturbing.
It was freakish.
And a flashback.
Yeah?
Oh man, that was such a weird
The
part.
lesbian flashback with Amame, too. Remember that?
Yeah, that was
Oh,
weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that might
It's
have
much
been...
different than Norwegian Wood, though, because Norwegian Wood was just, I guess, because the main character was a dude.
Exactly.
And so
Maybe.
when random women throughout his life would just take their clothes off for him, which I'm like, why does this never happen to me? Why is
It should happen to everyone.
So anyway, what is your...
Yes, back to my favorite
some
stuff,
of your
I guess.
favorite. What do you got? What do you like?
I really like... I like all books, but my favorite would have to be fantasy books. My favorite series would be either Wheel of Time or the Belgorod by...
Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan.
Yes, by Robert Jordan, and then the Belgorod by David Eddings are also my
Which
favorite.
I've still not read a
Yeah,
sentence
you're
of.
you're the only one who hasn't out of I think all of our friends. Well, actually no, I think TJ hasn't
That's
either.
such a nerdy group of friends, though. I feel like if we expanded,
Then I feel like I would have
We
to
would find
introduce him
different
to
things.
it. So
Okay,
There's
so-
those. I also really like Brandon Sanderson and the Mistborn series.
A local author.
Yes.
Here in Provo area.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe?
Books I like. I don't think I have a specific type of book that I like. I do know that lately I have gotten tired of very long fantasies. After I read Lord of the Rings and I was like, nothing can really top this, then, it's kind of rough to get into fantasies. But I like Harry Potter quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, out of the three of us, I'm the least avid reader, I'd say. But I do read a lot of nonfiction filmmaking books.
Well, that's just for study.
So right now I'm reading a collection of essays by Hayao Miyazaki, based upon his animation experience, through the Japanese
His animation career, yeah.
So that's what I'm reading right now. Outside of our book club, of course. As I've said, I love Harry Potter. I love Lord of the Rings. I'm kind of just that guy. And that's about it. Actually, I really enjoy Michael Crichton books, at least the ones I've read. I've read like half a dozen of his books, and I really enjoyed those. I really enjoy the sci-fi that's not so far into the future that we can't connect with it.
I liked his Jurassic Park.
Yeah, we all love Jurassic Park. I
Yeah.
really liked Prey also.
I think I read
Michael Crichton.
Timeline. By
I've
him,
never
too.
read Timeline.
I have it.
I did read The 13th Warrior, or Eaters of the Dead, I think is what it's actually called, and that was kind of crappy. And so was like his last novel that he did when he was still living. I think it was called Next. I didn't really care for that book at all, but yeah, Jurassic Park's really good.
Yeah, and The Lost World's alright too.
Yeah.
Not as good.
It's
Same
alright.
with
It's
the movies.
alright.
Well, what about you, Caleb? What are your favorites?
Mostly fiction, probably fantasy. My favorite series is probably The Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Not complete yet,
Dun,
but
dun, 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 dun.
it's really good and makes a pretty good TV show too, even if it is inferior. But they'd have to spend a lot of time on it for it to be as good. I'm kind of glad they don't, because then I could never get anybody else into it. And HBO has done a much better job of that. So I really enjoy his, even though the little bastard, never comes out with books.
I don't think little is the way you should
He's a
describe
big
him.
bastard.
He's
yeah.
a very large man.
He's probably going to suffer from die before series is done syndrome that his, colleague in the fantasy world,
Robert Jordan
Jordan,
from.
started.
He got somebody to finish his books, though, unlike George
His
R. R.
wife
Martin.
got someone to finish his
George
books.
R. R. Martin doesn't
Well,
want anyone
yeah.
to finish him, is the thing.
What a douche.
Robert Jordan did.
Yeah, he wanted him finished because he felt like he owed his fans.
And you still haven't finished that last one.
I'm
series.
Yeah, he
halfway
felt like
through
he
it.
owed it to you. The guy died and you haven't finished it.
I'm reading it. I am halfway through
Thanks.
it right now.
Biggest fan. No, but I enjoy that mostly. I really enjoyed Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings was awesome. So, a lot of fantasy.
Yeah, we're part of that generation, I'd say. We are the Harry Potter generation, plus the Lord of the Rings movies came out. And of course, that makes us all go read Lord of the Rings. So.
Yeah, not such a bad thing. I think I started reading the second Lord of the Rings book when I saw the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably about the same time as they came out that I read them.
Mm-hmm.
And also Dave Eddings, the Belgariad and Malorian. They're awesome fantasy series.
Redemption of the Palace.
Yeah, it's okay.
Only
It's
okay?
good. It's super cheesy in the end, though.
Yeah,
It's like the ending of Final Fantasy IV. It's just the wedding scene. No way to end a book. But yeah, mostly fiction right now. I'm trying to read I Am Legend. It's first half was good, and the second half is like a bunch of short stories about these weird ass sci-fi legend stuff. Like there's this part where this chick gets her boyfriend this evil Native American doll that's supposed to house an evil spirit, and as long as you keep the necklace over it, it'll keep its spirit locked within the doll, and the necklace falls off, and the little doll like attacks and slashes the chick up, and then it ends up taking over her body, and the girl like calls her mom over and is waiting in the corner and is going to kill her mom, and then the scenario ends. Yeah, I'm like, what is this? after this like vampire section of the book, this shit starts popping up, and I'm like, what is this book? What am I reading here?
That's weird.
Weird collection of stories.
I feel like I didn't say enough because it just sounds like I just read Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. But that's not true.
Yeah.
I do read Murakami.
It's true, you do.
It's okay. We've all...
My sister buys me like 2 books every Christmas and like a book for my birthday, so I always read what my sister read. So a lot of young adult novels for some reason, and then some just small adult drama books, and they all end up being pretty good. I'm honestly having trouble thinking of names right now, but they were all good.
Well, technically, you do have more rated on your Goodreads than I do.
So I've read more books.
Well, you're comfortable rating more books that you've read than I am. I haven't read some in long enough that I don't really feel it's fair to rate them.
Well, I use my Goodreads account like a
Motivation.
history keeper.
Yeah.
I put every book that I could remember reading on there. That wasn't like a picture book.
Yeah. I feel like, with me at least, I know lists help me. Like, it feels like I'm accomplishing something when I can look and say, I feel like I read enough, or like I don't read enough, and that's kind of part of the reason why we're doing this, because we don't feel
so we can read a book a month, basically.
Yeah, so we can feel like we're not missing out on this whole world of literature, since we do all enjoy stories in other mediums.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well do it in books because there's so much there.
Right.
And so yeah, we all like similar things, but we all have little guilty pleasures, so to speak. Your film books and whatnot is something that I probably wouldn't read. You shouldn't feel guilty. It's like your life's work to do film, and then my stuff. Stephen King. I love Stephen King, but although he's pretty beloved anyway, it's not really guilty pleasure if he's like one of the best-selling authors ever.
Right. So is R.L. Stein. Should we start reading the Goosebumps?
I've read a bunch of those, and honestly, not as good as they.
Dude, didn't we look up how many there were? And it was like what was it, 1,600 of them or something like that? It was.
I don't remember it being that long, but I do remember it being a very high amount.
Yeah,
we should look that up.
Very, very large amount of books.
It's got a lot of books. It's hard not to.
I think they're all like 200 pages, and he just like pumps them out like 3 a week.
Agatha Christie's the same way. She has a lot of books, and she's like one of the top-selling authors ever. Like the Bible is like I think the only thing that's sold more. That and Shakespeare, I think. Shakespeare's sold more copies, which is weird because
they're plays,
and he's been dead for ever. But he's a New York Times bestseller, along with everybody else, essentially. So yeah.
All right. So what kind of? I mean, we may not have nominees yet for the month after this, but what kind of books are you guys thinking about being your nominations? I know we have specific rules about what our nominations are, and it doesn't really concern the audience. But what do you think? What have you been thinking about nominating? What's a book you want to read on our podcast?
Part of me wants to start just ganging up on you with Caleb and making us read fantasy series that I've been meaning to read, and might as well just choose book 1 and 2, and then make you'd be like, well, I've got to pick book 3 now.
We just got to read the series.
Because there's another David Eddings series that I haven't read yet.
Whatever
Millennium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't started. Although I feel like
read part of the first one.
You did, yeah.
Read them.
Haven't started it.
Jackass.
I'm trying. I'm gonna make you read them with me.
No, I bought them for you, not for me.
Well, you can get a different copy. I'll read that one. Yeah, probably something like that, or maybe I have this goal to just read all of Stephen King's books, even though I've only read...
That would be brutal. It's almost as long a list as R.L. Stein's.
Nah, it's not quite that long. It's probably more pages.
There's like 400 books in the Dark Tower series.
There's only 700.
Yeah, dude, I swear there's more than that.
There's 7 or 8. That's it. They're big, though. Some of them are big bastards.
I think I tried reading a chapter of The Gunslinger, and then I put it down.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, the intro to that is amazing.
Yeah, it's cool, but I was not an avid reader at the time.
I didn't read it either. I started it and didn't read it either.
See? Yeah, don't be talking like that.
But I also heard from my cousin that there's a lot of his earlier books that he had started during the series that kind of characters show up from them. Not necessarily the Green Mile, but one of the characters in Salem's Lot, the preacher, or not one of the
Another book that I read
guys.
about a chapter out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, Salem's Lot.
That was a good book, man. It's way better.
I've started a lot of Stephen
That was a
King
better
books.
freaking vampire book than in I Am Legend, I'll tell you that. But it's got a character that shows up in the Dark Tower series. Same with The Stand. The main evil guy, Randall Flagg, in The Stand is a main